Jesus addressed this parable to those who are convinced of their own righteousness and despised everyone else. Two people went up to the temple area to pray. One was a Pharisee, the other was a tax collector. The Pharisee took up his position and spoke this prayer to himself. Oh God, I thank you that I'm not like the rest of humanity, greedy, dishonest, adulterous, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes on my whole income. But the tax collector stood off at a distance and would not even raise his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast and prayed, Oh God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, the latter went home justified, not the former. For whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Hello and welcome to Closer Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and I'm glad that you can join us. Oh, thank God I'm not like the rest of humanity, greedy, dishonest, adulterous. Where are the lions when you really need them? The people who, people who quit smoking, lost 20 pounds, or found Jesus, spare us, O Lord. The ones who now all of a sudden are at that point that they think they're better than everyone else. And I just want to say, I know what I'm getting you for Christmas. I'm buying you a mirror this year. I want you to see what's really there. And that challenge, the challenge that we live with of thinking that we're better than everyone else. We're better because, well, at least I've never done this. At least I've never done that. One does what one can with what one has. And that understanding, one of the things that I've oftentimes thought, and as you know, I've spent a lot of time in the penitentiary as chaplain, and I meet some of these guys and I go, I don't know where I would be if that happened to me. Years ago, I did my residency in a hospital for criminally insane and mentally disordered sex offenders. And the people there who were pedophiles had all had sex forced on them by an adult before the age of 12. What does that do to a kid? What does it do to a kid when he sees his parents doing drugs? What does it do to a kid when he sees the father literally beat the mother, sometimes beat him to death? What notion of marriage or family or love? It's easy to look at your life and realize how blessed you are and turn around and say, well, thank God I'm not like the rest of them. But you know what? There but for the grace of God go I. I have no idea where I would be if some of this stuff happened to me. We've spoken so many times about the importance of children and the example that we give to our children. And it seems that the more we speak about it, the less people really get it. And there's one young man comes to mind, and he's in prison for life, but he was adopted, didn't know who his real parents were. So his parents kept trying, couldn't have kids. They finally adopt this little boy. He's all boy. He's into everything, okay? And as he's growing up being all boy, he kept hearing his mother say, we should have never taken you from the home. We should have left you there. You're nothing but trouble. Well, when he's 13 years old, his adoptive mother gets pregnant. And his parents have their own child. When he's 14, his dad says, we're done here. We don't need you. You're on your own. Imagine, you're 14 years old and you're on your own. Yeah, he's got tattoos from his toes to his hairline. Yeah, he's lived on his wits. Yeah, he's done all the drugs. Yeah, he's shacked up with this and shacked up with that one. He's done all that. I don't know if I would have done any different. I don't know if there would not have been a rage inside of me that would have made me act out much differently than had I not been born into a couple who was married with brothers and sisters, and we were taught respect, and the only way you didn't go to the church is if you were dead or in the hospital. You know, we had all those examples. And that taught us a whole lot. But you look at what some of these kids have been through and what their parents have taught them. And someone showed me a guy recently, killed by police, and they showed me his Facebook, and he had his two youngest children, little boy and little girl, with pistols aimed at the camera taking the picture. These kids weren't in school yet, and they had two of their father's pistols pointing at a camera, and you go, what do you learn there? What do you learn there? And so when we go through this, oh, thank God I'm not like the rest of humanity, I really thank God that the humanity that I was exposed to as I was raised gave me so much to be grateful for. And in being grateful and knowing that it's just the luck of the draw, I didn't do anything in utero to deserve the parents that I had, to deserve the life that I had. I was just blessed. I was just lucky, and that's by the grace of God. You know when I really realized that? Excuse me. Was in Calcutta. You know, you guys know I've been there and I've worked there and I've been in the streets, and one of the things Mother Teresa asked me never to do was give money to beggars. She now has 27 places throughout Calcutta. At the time she had 17, but she now has 27 places. If someone needs food or needs to be cleaned or needs a place to sleep or needs medical attention or has medical, she has a place to take care of them. She said, don't train them to beg. She said, that's not what you want to do. And it was interesting because I was okay with the adults. The kids ate my heart out. You know, the little kids ate my heart out. So what I did was I kept a big bag of candy in my backpack, okay? And I didn't give them money. She asked me not to give them money, so I didn't, but I gave them candy. And it was funny because one day I was in the street, and I'm telling you, I just got swarmed. You know, and I really couldn't get away. They were grabbing, and I turned, and my backpack hit this little girl. And she looked up at me like, why did you do that to me? And of course I didn't intentionally do it. And I looked at that child and I said, why isn't that me? Why am I not, without a shirt on, with no shoes on, in the filth of the streets, begging for a living? I don't know the answer to that. But I know that as we start to look around and we look at this world and this place is going to hell in a handbasket. People are crazy. They kill you for nothing. They do this, they do that, they do. I'm not excusing any of it. Not making an excuse for one bit of it. But I am telling you that before we go thanking God we're not like the rest of humanity, we need to thank God for the gift of where we come from. And that gratitude of the example, the life, the love, the faith, the nurturing, the education, the belief, the safety, everything that we thought all kids had, they didn't have. They didn't have. It was funny because my parents were wonderful, very hardworking people, but we certainly were not rich. They gave us a great education, they gave us great love, but we were taught if we wanted something, we had to work for it. You had to buy your own car, and you had to do these things, and you had to buy your own clothes, and if you're going out, you pay for that, and all those things, okay? And I had a guy that he was friends with the group that I was friends with, but I really didn't like him. He had a rich dad, his dad was a doctor, and he had the new car and the brand new GTO, and those of us of a certain age will know what that car is. And He had all the new clothes and he had all the different things, okay? And he was just like, he had it all. And I didn't like him. Thought he's a little bit arrogant. Probably the truth of the matter, in my juvenile days, I was jealous of him because I thought he had it all. One thing and another. He finishes, med school or whatever I finish, come back in Baton Rouge and I see his name in the obituary column. And I wish I could tell you I went to the funeral home out of deep sympathy and a sense of loss, but I wanted to find out what happened. I didn't know what the deal was, and they kept saying, oh, poor so-and-so, poor so-and-so. I said, what do you mean, poor so-and-so? Poor so-and-so, he had a new car, had this, had new clothes, and all that. He said, oh. He said, his dad ran around. His dad did all these different things. His mother kept having nervous breakdowns over that. He raised himself with a credit card. He never, had a family to nurture him and do everything for him. And in my, stupid, juvenile mind, I thought this young man had everything because he had the new car and he had his, money at his disposal and he had, all the nice clothes. He didn't have the most important thing. And the deal was he died of a drug overdose. He died of a drug overdose because, I don't know, everything he had isn't what he really wanted. What he really wanted was to be loved, to be safe, to be nurtured, to be believed in, to be taken care of, to have faith, all the things I had. I misidentified what you consider riches because I really had what he wanted. Me all along thinking I was jealous because he had so much. And in reality, that was the great riches. So as we look at this gospel about, oh, thank God I'm not like the rest of people, you have to understand where the rest of people come from. You know the old saying, never judge a man till you walk a mile in his moccasins, okay? That's very, very true. We do what we can with what we have, with what we've been taught. Now that doesn't mean, and it's not an excuse, okay, so I grew up with all this stuff, so it means I have to be a criminal, I have to be a killer, I have to be violent, I have to be antisocial. It doesn't mean that. But when we see people and you just, I don't get it. What's their problem? And it's not a question of us passing judgment. It's a question of us seeking understanding and trying to see that person as God sees that person. And oftentimes, that person is hurting. Oftentimes, that person is angry. Oftentimes, that person is insecure. I saw a great YouTube by Dr. Larry Elders about what's really needed is black fathers. And he said in an interview with the late rapper, Tupac Shakur. Tupac Shakur was a big-time home rapper, made a lot of money, got blown away. Another rapper killed him, whatever. And he said in this interview, Tupac Shakur said, I'm sure if I would have had a father who taught me the things that a father teaches his son, I wouldn't have gone through life being as afraid and as insecure as I've been all my life. He is making millions of dollars and admitting he didn't have the most important thing, and that was a place where he was loved and felt safe. We need to talk about the rest of humanity. We'll be back in a moment. Hi, I'm Father Jeff Bayou from Closer Walk Catholic Communications. Thank you for being here today, and a special thanks for the support that you give us. First of all, your prayerful support we so desperately need, and also your financial support. We are donor-driven, and that is what keeps us on the air today. As you well know, the truth is in great demand and in very short supply, and mainstream media is not going to bring you the truth of the Gospels of our Lord Jesus Christ because that's not socially acceptable and it's not politically correct. Certainly we all realize that when this life journey's over, we don't stand before the Supreme Court, we stand before the throne of God. Therefore, with great clarity and great charity, to pronounce the truth of the gospel is important. Your prayers, your financial support enables us to do that. So we thank you, and may God bring you closer in your walk with the Lord each day. God bless you. Oh, thank God I'm not like the rest of humanity, greedy, dishonest, adulterous, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I pay tithes on my whole income. Hello and welcome back to Closer Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad you can come back. I pay tithes on my whole income, and I fast twice a week. Big whoop. Well, I'm a good Catholic. I even use my envelopes. Good. I'm glad you use your envelopes. We need it. It's not the point. How many of us have taken the responsibility to develop an ongoing relationship with God? You'd be amazed at how many people think, I made my confirmation. Good. What'd you do after you were 13 years old? Have you done anything? That challenge in our own life to not get complacent and not think, I've got this religion thing down. I've even got direct deposit for my collection. I go to the same Mass every Sunday, and God help anyone who sits in my pew, okay? That sort of mentality that we've gotten comfortable. Norman Vincent Peale said, Christ not only came to comfort the afflicted, he came to afflict the comfortable. And sometimes I think the comfortable need to be afflicted because we can become very smug like the Pharisee, and we can say stuff like, well, I've never been divorced. Well, I've never had a problem with drugs or alcohol. Well, I've never had my child get pregnant. Well, I've never had to go through treatment for this, that, or the other. Well, I've certainly never had my husband or my wife do this, that, or the other. Well, good for you. It doesn't mean that I'm growing in my relationship with God. And that's really what the Pharisee is saying. You know what? I pay my tithes, I fast twice a week, I'm good. No, you're not. Well, guess what? I give up drinking every Lent. Or I give up chocolate every Lent. Or I give up smoking every Lent. Or I give up whatever I give up. I go 40 days and 40 nights without that. Well, bully for you. Just like being nailed to a cross, isn't it? That's not the deal. We do these things in order to grow in our knowledge, our love, our desire for the Lord. And if giving up chocolate is what you do for Lent, and besides, I've lost 7 pounds all during Lent, good for you. The purpose is not to benefit us, not at least physically, but spiritually. You know what? I've taken that money and I've gone to the soup kitchen and I've donated that, and every time I decide, I'd love a piece of chocolate, I'd love something, whatever it is, then I say a little prayer. I pray for this one, I pray for that one. I ask God to have mercy on me. I ask God to be more forgiving. I ask God to forgive what I've done in the past. If you're doing that, chocolate's great to give up for Lent. But if you're just hoping you're going to be able to fit in that Easter dress, you really haven't done that much. And the invitation is not only not to be smug and not to be arrogant about it, but to realize we are who we are in the sight of God. Nothing more, nothing less. And there are a lot of people who have impressions of us. Right or wrong, they have impressions of us. And especially those people who think, you're so wonderful, you're so holy, you're so this, you're so that. Thank you. But guess what? My mirror works. I know what stands before that mirror every day. I know my faults. I know my failings. I know my struggles. I know my temptations. And I know by the grace of God, that day, I'm not going to give in to any of those things. But longing for holiness and thinking I can be complacent because this one thinks I'm holy or that one thinks I'm holy, can't do it. And at the same time, the reverse is also, if someone thinks I'm dishonest, if someone thinks you're a big fake, someone thinks you're a big fraud, someone thinks you're nothing but show, I am who I am in the sight of God. Nothing more, nothing less. And when all is said and done, I don't stand before that group. I don't stand before the other group. I don't stand before the Supreme Court. I stand before the throne of God. And before the throne of God, I give an accounting of my life. Was I a big fraud? You may not have thought so. God knows. Was I a great saint? You may have thought so. God knows. And it's that ability to humble ourselves in the sight of God. I read a very interesting article because, back in September, the world-famed exorcist of Rome died. And he really was, by all accounts, just this incredibly dedicated, holy man. And one of the persons interviewing him said, he said, before I grant you an interview, I have 3 questions. Do you go to Mass every week? Do you go to communion every week? And do you go to confession at least once a month? And he said, if you're going to live in a world and not be swallowed up and not be tempted and not let Satan get away with you, because believe me, he's out there. Believe me, he's live. Believe me, he's active. And believe me, the holier you get, the more he's after you. So those 3 things. You go to Mass every week, you go to communion every week, and you go to confession at least once a month. And it really is that moment when we stop and at least once a month we evaluate our lives. I'm not everything I said I was. I'm not everything I'm supposed to be. You know what? I've been struggling with this sin for the last 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, you name it and claim it. And somehow I'm not availing myself to God's grace. I keep saying going to confession doesn't do any good because I am doing the same thing over and over. It's not the confession that's not doing any good. It's me not wanting to really grow in my knowledge and my love and my desire for the Lord. And I'm not saying, oh good, go to confession and guess what, you're not going to do that anymore. Maybe you won't do it as often. And maybe after that you'll do it a little less often. The more you go to the sacrament of reconciliation, the more grace God affords you. And the more grace God affords you, the more strength you have in the midst of the temptations that some of us have lived with all of our lives. That's been the one thing that I've struggled with, and I've just tried and I've tried and I've tried. Well, only by the grace of God do we get over that. And it is God's grace that gives us the strength, the knowledge, the courage, the wisdom to really grow in our desire. And that becomes the ultimate issue of this Pharisee and the tax collector. The tax collector left satisfied, or justified, not because he had a laundry list of sins. He realized that in the sight of God, he had a long way to go. He realized in the sight of God, he was far from being what he should be. And he simply bowed his head, beat his breast, and said, Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. And when we realize we're a sinner, and people come in and they'll come into confession and say, Father, I don't know what to say, because I just don't do anything wrong. And okay, honey, you take the stole and let me go to confession to you. I sin every day. And if you can look at yourself and say, I don't ever sin, either you're getting a little touch of dementia, you don't remember stuff, or you have no ability to see yourself as God sees you. See yourself as God sees you. Not as you see yourself. Oh, aren't you wonderful? We're just so happy. You've been so wonderful. We thank you for your wonderful casserole. No. To see myself as God sees me. To see that sometimes I go, I don't say it, but the Lord knows I think it. That sort of thing. That we need to see ourselves the way God sees me. And there are many things in our heart, there are many things in our mind, there are many things in our thoughts and our struggles that are anything but pleasing in the sight of God. And if you've gotten to that point where you're not consciously aware of your sins, then what I ask you to do is go online, and they have some great examinations of conscience. They have 10, 15, 20 of them, I don't know. We have one on our website, but go on there and look at it. Look at what it means to live our life according to the gospel, what it means to live our life according to the Ten Commandments, what it means to live a life that's pleasing in the sight of God. You know, maybe things we genuinely don't recognize who we are and how we appear in the sight of God. If that's the case, I go back to the complacency. I go back to that, same place we've been for the last 10 years. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. I had 2 bad thoughts. I had said 3 bad words, and I got angry. Well, good. But there's so much more to who we are and who we are not in the sight of God. And that's what the invitation of the Pharisee and the tax collector. The tax collector, he knew way too much. He knew that standing before God, he had a lot of work to do. And rather than brag about whatever work he had done, he recognized his sinfulness and he sought God's mercy. Please understand, God's mercy is always there, but God doesn't chase us down. And if you've not had a good experience with confession, the sacrament of reconciliation, please try. Please try to find either a good confessor that you would like to make as your confessor and go there on a regular basis. Please try to find a spiritual director. But a lot of people act out, do things, say things, act in certain ways because they've never forgiven themselves. They don't feel good about who they are. They don't feel good about what they've done. But simply because they're not doing it anymore, they think they're okay. And that's the challenge. Lord, have mercy on me, a sinner. And let God's mercy bring grace into our life. Let God's mercy change our heart. Let God's mercy change our prescription when we pray that we will see ourselves as God sees us. And seeing ourselves as God sees us gives us the desire to change that. I want to be better. I want to be more pleasing. I want to be more loving. I want to be what God has called me to be. Thank God I'm not like the rest, but I've still got a long way to go in what I am. Use that opportunity. We thank you for being with us. May each day bring you closer in your walk with the Lord. God bless you.